Alrighty, we've already done the intro, so okay, go ahead with your presentation. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the invitation. Again, good morning, afternoon, or evening to you. So I'm going to present the OSSR and why we apply for the SciCodes membership. And I think quite a lot of overlap you will see during my presentation with issues that already also have been presented now, like CodeMeter. Okay, so first of all, where do we come from? So the OSSR is actually a community catalog or repository of resources. So we are stemming from the ESCAPE project, which built up an EOSC cell. So quite a lot of abbreviations as always. So EOSC, if you don't know it, stands for the European Open Science Cloud, so an EC-funded big scientific-based effort to build up a cloud or cloud-like service for science, for open science. And the ESCAPE project stems from the astroparticle, particle physics, and astronomy research infrastructures there. So the big research infrastructures there came together and built their own system, how they thought or how the needs actually were from those RIs. This was actually 5 years in play, and since the end of that project, the ESCAPE project is now an open collaboration, and you will see there's quite a lot of different parts to the EOSC cell, so like a virtual observatory, a data lake, a science platform, but also citizen science. But we are focusing here on our catalog and repository of resources. So what did we build there? So the OSSR is actually, so stands for Open Source Scientific Software and Service Repository, where the focus is on the open source scientific software here. So we build it as a sustainable and open access repository for scientific software in our community, so the astroparticle physics related community, and as an enabler for open science there. The actual background is that it's built on a curated Synodo community, Synodo also stemming, of course, from this community where we are. And we build on dedicated tools that enable us to service a complete software lifecycle and maintenance lifecycle in there. Of course, as this was built as part of the EOSC project, this is fully onboarded and linked to EOSC via the EOSC Explorer here. So for a developer or for a user, so for a developer, you come here from above, for a user, you come from below. We have actually three different platforms. So first of all, everyone has the development platform, either ours or you use your own development platform, of course. Then we have the repository where we collect all the software and services and also link to the EOSC. And then we have a landing page. And actually there's discussion to have a new landing page there. Which is the entry point, but also the link aggregation to the other partners and such. So for a provider, how does the workflow look like? So you develop your software, you maintain your software, you tag a version, a release, you add the metadata, and we chose CodeMeter for that. So there's also from our side crosswalks from CodeMeter, for example, to the Synodo metadata or also to CFF. And actually then a typical development workflow let the continuous integration do actually the rest. So publish the source code, update or update your existing record, put it into a long-term archive, our Synodo archive. Or if you don't go the direct code, build a container, either Singularity, Aptainer, or Docker, and publish image or register the image. And we implemented a small library that does this actually CI, but also doing checks on the CodeMeter and so forth, so that the best practices we put out there for our users are checked automatically, and then it's integrated. So currently the status is, of course, growing, still growing, that we have something like 75 research software here. We, of course, hope to reach the 100 soon and much more. And you can directly go there via the Zenodo link, of course, but also, I mean, also important to have that aggregated, and that's in the EOS portal, for example, via OpenAir, where you can always find the latest results there. Of course, this all registered also as at RE3 data. So as I said, we started as a funded project. We're now in an open collaboration area, and that's of course a little bit of a transition phase here. And we will continue in 3 main areas of collaboration within that open collaboration. So policy strategy and onboarding. So the OSSR is actually a curated repository, community repository, and we want to keep it like that. So there is a curation process, and of course, we still need the technical developments. We have a few more subgroups under discussion. You can find a few buzzwords over here. Our aim continues to collect the software and to provide the additional visibility and also citability for the research software engineers or the researchers writing and or maintaining software themselves, and to strengthen in general the software competence with quality and focus. But of course, also to foster publication opportunities and offer standards for new communities to join in. So we already have a way to allow actually more sub-communities to join in an easy way. So on the onboarding, so how do someone bring their project into the OSSR? So we allow for all projects, maybe software services that are related to astroparticle physics content. Of course, everything that's beneficial for the community is very welcome. That includes also analyses and workflows, should there be a stable version of them. The onboarding is kept rather simple. Also, we are just registering for a GitLab community, and there is a workflow. Then the work has to be presented on an onboarding session where we will have several per year, just a 50 minutes presentation, and then the project is added to Zenodo and curated by us, checking the best or the common practices that we laid out and should be followed there. For further reading, I just put you in some white paper. We have written a somehow scientific paper, which is currently under review, and a policy paper, all for you to link up. I sent the link to Tom for this presentation. So if you're interested, you can follow that up. And that's already it. So we started as an EOS project, but OSSR became an open collaboration lately. I hope we identified already many overlapping topics with SciCodes as you have. So we're applying for being part of this consortium. So thanks for your attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Nobody else has a question. I have a question. No one, no other questions?
I have a few questions actually.
Go for it.
So the first is, what do you mean by what does it mean when you say you're a sustainable repository?
Well, the sustainability means actually that, of course, the entries in the OSSR should not go away even in 10 years plus, right? They should be there. They should be still citable, because the idea is that you also use that in your paper publications and so forth. And this is why we actually chose Zenodo as our back end, because this, of course, nothing is there forever, but at least guarantees a sustainability of the entries for a rather long time.
Okay, so you in the digital preservation sense,
Yeah.
you want it, you mean it to be a permanent URL for 10 years or forever, whichever comes first.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the other part of it was, could you go back a few slides? There was
Sure.
this workflow that you were showing where yeah, that one. So is this all automated through the CI? When you say let the CI do the rest, is that what's happening here, or is this sort of like a guided process where the model author or the computational software author is kind of walking through these steps with your guidance?
Yeah, so I mean the what we built into this library that you can simply link into your software is actually the complete well, release of the project to Zenodo and everything that's necessary. Of course, whether you want to actually just release source code or build container images or so is dependent on the use case of the different authors that we don't put into the CI. So this CI is really there. It will first of all check that the metadata is correctly filled in, and will also simply push any new releases of the software that you will have and that you're tagging automatically to Zenodo. Whoever knows Zenodo knows that there is a GitHub integration already, where what we put in there is an additional GitLab integration for all of that.
Okay, so you're building the GitLab integration to Zenodo.
Yes, exactly.
Got it. Cool, thank you.
I have a small question. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead, Danny.
Oh, I have one small question regarding the images. Are you also publishing the images into Zenodo? Because those can be a lot and get quite big. So I was wondering if that's what you're currently doing and plan on doing.
Well, that depends really. This is usually one of the things where we take the users on the hand just to discuss that during the onboarding, whether you really want to do it. I mean, there are use cases where you want to publish an image because that image is part of the analysis workflow that you want to present and preserve for the future. Then it makes sense to have an image published, which is not kind of problematic from the size in Zenodo so far, because we can currently, I think the limit is 20 gigabytes, so you need a really large image to publish this. But of course, sometimes it makes no sense. If you can simply build an image from your source code, and then it makes, of course, no sense to publish an image. Then you simply build it and register it to a registry there.
I see. Interesting. I had to do this once, and and I was thinking that maybe this, like, I don't know, I was feeling that it felt like a heavyweight, procedure to do it. But I completely agree with you that in some cases you really need, because maybe you don't have the build instructions of the image anymore, but you do still have the image, right? So you need to export it and make sure that it's still accessible and citable. All right. Thank you. I was very curious about that.
Welcome.
Carol?
Yeah, mine was a bit more esoteric. So because I know that Kay is in Escape is about to start working with us in the eVerse project. So, and I've put in details of the eVerse project at the end of the minutes. eVerse is newly funded European Virtual Institute for Research Software Excellence, and it brings together 5 science clusters in Europe, plus the Software Sustainability Institute and the Dutch eScience Centre. And actually there's a whole bunch of software directories. Where do you see that this might be complementary or overlap in those directories? I'm thinking about the RSD or Workflow Hub or other things. I can see with complementariness, but do you think there's a feasibility of us being able to create a complete pipeline that covers different aspects for different folks. Do you see what I mean, Kate?
Yeah, I completely. One example is Jason is in here, so we are also in the discussion. As I said, we're thinking about. I mean, we put together a very minimal landing page, but actually the idea would be to use RSD as a perfect landing page onto all of that, right? So what we built here is really a workflow that is more or less standard. You don't need the OSSR except for, of course, the curation and you want to have the SAMP on it. But all the rest is it could be done for any community, and I think quite a lot of things that we can do there and progress on are, for example, the metadata handling and actually what is currently missing for SSR, and I think also for several others, is the code quality, right? We do a basic check, but we don't do an in-depth code quality. And that's definitely a lacking thing, and where we can work quite a lot together.
Lorraine?
I think Kay just addressed my question. I was going to ask what they did about code, if they highly ensured code quality in terms of, you know, validation and verification. But I think he addressed that.
Exactly. No, it's a standard. I mean, we have some best practices. Of course, you should have a README, and you should probably pick a coding style and so forth. But we don't do an in-depth check of that, and that's the next step to do, actually. And there we really look forward. Yeah.
And I had one question that's piggybacking a little bit on Carol's. You know, have you done any kind of interoperability work where you've got possibly, you know, software that might be listed in multiple places, right? So if it's on ASCL or if it's on Workflow Hub already, you know, how are you thinking about kind of operating your records with other versions of the software that is registered in other places?
Yeah, actually, there was quite some discussion about that. So, for example, if you ASCL, if you're thinking about that of course is something which is related very much to publications, right? There's code for publications. We go the other way around. So the idea was actually, we don't do a deduplication so far. So that's also probably on the to-do list. But the idea is where we start is to integrate as early as possible into the life cycle of the software development. So not as an add-on. And we want to bring that into the communities. So in that sense, we see that if we're successful, we start at being one of the first ones where it's published. But also what's possible now with the aggregators of course, that you can go quite a deep already with the aggregation there and check whether it's on different repositories already.
Awesome. Any last questions? Thank you so much, Kay.
Oh, sorry, Tom.
You caught it. Go for it.
Yeah, okay. Which was this is really a repository, and it's kind of trying to say, okay, here it is. Here you can go get this software. I've kind of snapshotted it and stuck it into Zenodo, for example. How does that relate to software heritage? And I'm looking at the lovely Moran here because she's popped up right in front of my screen, because it would seem that this is quite overlapping in some senses with software heritage.
Can I answer? Okay, sorry. I'm going to jump in just to say that we are collaborating with Zenodo and CERN to have the integration between the scholarly infrastructure and software heritage, which is a universal source code archive. And I think the best way here is to continue publishing it in a scholarly kind of ecosystem and not directly go to the other solution, which is archiving in software heritage. While saying that, archiving software heritage is absolutely possible, and the fact that we have multiple identifiers also for the code itself and the metadata on the Zenodo record doesn't poses any problems on that aspect.
Thank you for that.
Yes, good.
I think it's also the complementarity, right? So a software heritage has every change in all the software. But what we are trying to do there is, of course, also make the software interoperable and cross-fertilize, right? So that people can take software, and that means that if we have an entry in the repository, we always encourage also to put, for example, test data there, and put an example how to use the software, the scientific software together. This, of course, you will not find in software heritage, right? So that's the different answers.
So for me, that suggests that some sort of landscaping or sort of, you know, bigger picture, contextual, I don't know what I could call it, image, whatever, something that shows where all these different kind of things fit and where they touch and where they could integrate would be really useful, because it's very confusing to the community, because they see all these different things and they all look kind of the same at 50,000 feet, and at 5,000 feet they look a bit different, and then when you get hit the bottom they're quite different but could fit together, but it is confusing. And so I think there's something there to do with, maybe in Fair Call for EOS could be doing it or maybe Fair Impact or something. There's some need to create a landscaping piece.
Yeah, that sounds like one thing for Fair Impact.
It does sound like something for Fair Impact, Danny, and let's remember it when we go back into Fair Impact land.
When we create the RS kit.
Well, I completely agree with you, and I've put in the chat a link to the objectives of Fair Call for EOS integrators between the different infrastructures and software heritage. But after that is possible, we should have some landscaping to give the users some more information about what is possible in this space. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. We're having good long-term planning here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the presentation. I'm going to stop the recording.